everybody, it's Catherine from Jayne, Catherine on Books, and I'm here today for another instalment for March Mystery Madness. So it's 7th of March today, so that's 7 days into this year's extravaganza. As you know, I love March Mystery Madness. I'm usually the UK host for that, but I'm not doing it this year. I couldn't commit to the time. And I've brought you 3 historical series that are firm favourites of David and myself, and thought that there might be something here if you're on the lookout for a new historical detective type series. So the first ones are by Celestin, and this is the Axeman's Jazz, and I usually get it wrong. I usually call it the Jasmine's Axe, but yeah. The Axeman's Jazz, and this is based in New Orleans in the early 1910s going up to about 1920, and each of the books, I'll show you the other 2 we've got, are based in a different city in the USA. And they're really good. I mean, this one, the Axeman's Jazz, I couldn't put it down. There's definitely a 5-star for me. They are very gritty. They're not like a cozy crime. They can be quite gritty and hard-boiled, really, in the tone. But the plots are intriguing, very difficult to guess where they're going. Now, they do feature our 2 main characters. So we have Michael Talbot and we have Ida. I don't know as if we ever find out what Ida's surname is, to be honest. I can't remember. But she, around at the time, there's a big well-known detective agency called the Pinkertons. And we just love to hear about the Pinkertons because our surname's Pinkett and we get called Pinkerton often by mistake. So yeah, we'll have to set up a series. We'll have to set up our own detective series. Anyway, Ida initially is a secretary at the Pinkerton Detective Agency, but she's a wannabe. Yeah, she wants to be a real life private eye, and in this first case, she sort of ends up embroiled in the mystery of it all, in an investigation that's headed up by Detective Inspector Michael Talbot. Now, they sort of end up working together on this, together with Ida's friend Louis Armstrong. So although the 2 main characters running throughout the 3 books I'm going to tell you are Michael and Ida, we do get a guest appearance from time to time from Louis Armstrong, the Louis Armstrong, who is a friend of Ida's. Now, this first one is set in New Orleans, as I say, and it says that Michael Talbot, heading up the official investigation, is struggling to find leads and harbouring his own grave secret. Former detective Luca D'Andrea finds himself working for the mafia, whose need to solve the mystery of the Axeman is every bit as urgent as that of the authorities. And Ida, a secretary at the Pinkerton Detective Agency, stumbles across a clue which lures her and her musician friend Louis Armstrong to the case and into terrible danger. So as Michael, Luca and Ida work together, the Axeman issues a challenge to the people of New Orleans: play jazz or risk becoming the next victim. Oh, and it's so good. So good. In fact, I fancy reading it again now I've read that out. So that's set in New Orleans. The next one is Dead Man's Blues, and this one is set in Chicago. And so you can imagine we've got the theme going through it of Al Capone and his gang of men, really, in this one. Now we're moving on to the 1920s in this, 1928 in Chicago. So after book 1, well, no, I'm not going to say too much because I think it'll spoil book 1. But Michael and Ida are trying to locate a missing heiress, and it proves harder than expected to find her. And after being called to a gruesome murder in Chicago's violent black belt, crime scene photographer Jacob Russo can't get the dead man's image out of his head and decides to track down the culprit himself. So we've got all sorts going on at the Ritz. We've got Al Capone that's sticking his oar in and, you know, trying to cause mayhem. And we've got all these different elements of people, all these different gangs that are trying to stick their oar in into trying to solve this case. And yeah, all mayhem and intrigue ensues. So that's the book 2, Dead Man's Blues. And then we have book 3, which is, they get thicker as you go along, The Mobsters Lament. Now, I've not read this yet, so I'm looking forward to this. So now with this, we're in 1947 New York. So each book is set in, like I say, a different city. And there's another one due out, but we haven't got, we checked before filming today, we haven't got a release date for that. But that is going to be based in Los Angeles, and it jumps forward a little while to 1960. So we've sort of got quite a big gap from this one being in 1947, and then we, you know, the next one's 1960. So I think it'll be out soon. We're hoping so anyway. So what is The Mobsters Lament about? I mean, the great covers, they're quite simplistic, but there's something eerie about them. It says, a gripping book that captures the fizzing energy of New York at one of the most exciting points in its history. Like every other mobster, the longer he stayed in the life, the closer he got to a shallow grave. So the mob fixer Gabriel Levison needs to leave this city behind, but his plans to flee are upset when he is given a job by the boss of all bosses, Frank Costello, a job he can't turn down. So around those times, you know, there was a lot of inter-gang rivalry and inter-mob rivalry and you know, bumping people off that aren't done as they're told. So I think Gabriel couldn't refuse what he was asked to do. And then we have a killing spree that goes on in a Harlem flop house, which brothel. I wasn't sure what a flop house was. I had to ask David. I've not heard the term flop house before. And it's left an innocent black man on death row. In order to save him, the man's father, ex-private investigator Michael Talbot, and his old partner Ida Young must track down the real killer. So Ida's childhood friend, and here we have Louis Armstrong coming back in, is on the brink of bankruptcy until a promoter approaches him with a strange offer to reignite his career. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was sort of strings attached to that offer, knowing how these, you know, how this series goes. So again, we've got all sorts of strings coming in all different directions in the middle of an investigation, and then it'll all be tied up really well at the end, because that's the style really of Ray Celestin. So I think it's quite unique series in as much I think the plot and the characters are equally exciting and equally well drawn, and that's quite difficult. You know, not all authors have got the wherewithal to pull together both. You'll read some that are very character driven and the fantastic characters, and there's other authors that they can do fantastic plots, but you know, well, you know, the characters are a bit meh. But I really do think that Ray Celestin has got that knack of being able to combine the two in very exciting ways. So yeah, really exciting. I urge you to try that one out. Okay then, so the second series I've got is the Mangle Street Murders by K.R.C. Kasasian, and Mangle Street Murders is book 1. Now, the 3 series that I'm featuring today are all historical and they all feature detectives. Now, I wouldn't call these police procedural books, because I personally feel that police procedurals are more contemporary, the more modern day. So, for example, we've got Olivia Kiernan, which has written another one of my favourite series. We've got 3 books in that, and you know, some of the more modern day books, then I call them police procedurals. These aren't, because you don't have, if you think back in the day, back in historical times, they don't have those procedures around. They don't have the same forensic evidence and forensics that they do today. So these are just, I think why I like them is that they are relying on the expertise and the groundwork that the detectives do. And so therefore I think it's very important, me personally, that I enjoy the characters in these, because really it's the character and their mythology and how they relate to people which form a big part of historical detective mysteries, really. So this one's set in 1882, and we have got our main character is Sidney Grice, and he lives in Gower Street, and he calls himself a personal investigator. Now, he's quite a particular person. He likes to, you know, dot the I's, cross the T's, and everything has to be done in a set and timely fashion, and he feels that he's a better detective really than Sherlock Holmes. Now, it's around the same time, and Sherlock Holmes is, in a way, they are rivals, although he says that, you know, Sherlock Holmes might take several cases on at once. Sidney Grice just concentrates on one investigation at a time, and he feels that that gives a more superior service, really, because he is giving his all to only one case at a time, so it is more of a personal service. So you can get the feel for how pedantic he can be. Now, he is assisted with this by his ward, who is March Middleton, and she is a lady of means. She has the money, and she's also another wannabe, so she's wanting to be a bit of a detective herself, and she has aspirations really to be the first lady detective in London. So she, I don't know, she can be a touch, she wants to push, she will push and push, because that is her ideal and that's where she wants to be. And at times that I feel that, you know, from reading this, that he's very precise and one thinks slow and sure, and she's perhaps a little bit on the hasty side because she's wanting to get places and to be somebody. He thinks he'll get there by his reputation and how he looks after his clients, whereas, you know, March Middleton, she's just wanting to get on and solve the case really, and get a name in lights. I think that's fair to say about them both. So in this first one, and again, we're not in Cosy Crime Street, these are grisly, and they do talk about the victims in quite grisly detail. So, and also around this time that tensions are a little bit high, because we've sort of just had, we're just getting over the Jack the Ripper scenario and all the the tension and the agitation that's been around because of those murders. So tensions are high when there's, you know, things aren't quite right. And March Middleton, anyway, she turns up at his place, and we get some really vicious murders taking place in Whitechapel. I mean, back in the day, and Whitechapel's on the London Monopoly board. It used to be a bit of a rough area, did Whitechapel. I think you could get your houses quite cheap on Monopoly, Whitechapel. And it's we're setting the scene, I feel, in this first book for their working relationship together, and also, I mean, there is, you know, they have got this personal connection even of her being his ward, but we've got another lovely character that comes into the mix, which I like in these, and she is Polly, can't think of Polly, just Polly, nobody knows her surname. Polly the housemaid. Oh, she's funny. She brings a smile to your face, and I like, you know, the three different characters, completely different to the Ray Celestin, but very quintessential. A bit like Sherlock Holmes. If you like Sherlock Holmes, you'll like this style. So book 1 is the Mangle Street Murders. Book 2, The Curse of the House of Foskett. Now in this second one, he's not doing so well, because there's things that happen in book 1 that I'm not going to mention, but there's things that happen in book 1 that really he's wanting to be the top dog, but in actual fact it has a reverse effect on his reputation, and so obviously he's trying to improve that. And he gets quite down. He's taken to lying in his bath for hours. Usually a voracious reader, he will pick up neither book nor newspaper. And his ward, March Middleton, has been left to dine alone. When a potential client has the temerity to die on his study floor, I mean, goodness me, fancy going and dying like that on his study floor. Sydney and March finally have a case to investigate, and this will lead them into the strange world of final death societies and to the door of the mysterious Baroness Foskett. Ooh, so yeah, we're gathering pace in book 2. Book 3, and what I do like with these, they've got the numbers of the series on the side. Now I do wish they'd all do that. You know, it's so, because a number of times I have to go on Google and you have to try and find out what order you're supposed to read a new series in, because you've suddenly bought book 10 or something. That happens to me a lot. So I love this, it's got the number on the side. So what's happening in this one? We're now in 1883 and he's called away to Yorkshire, and he leaves March Middleton behind, and I don't know, I get the sense that really he's not all that keen on her being a lady, the First Lady London detective. You know, it's of that era where he's left her behind to keep an eye on the house and to keep the, you know, and to run the household in his absence. So in some respects, I think, you know, he thinks, like, yeah, that's what you should be doing. But hearth and home hold little charm for March, who harbours dreams of becoming, again, London's foremost and first lady detective. So when a mysterious letter arrives from her long-lost uncle, she accepts his invitation to stay at the palatial Saturn villa. Her new Uncle Tolly is sweet, eccentric, and come the morning he's very, very dead. Oh yes, he's dead. He's dead. But March is not called upon to solve the case. Instead, she's in the frame for the murder. Oh, there's been a murder. We knew there would be, didn't we? So that's book 3. Book 4, Secrets of Gaslight Lane. I'm not going to say too much about this because I feel that, you know, we've already got 3 books where things are happening, and I think in a series like this you say too much. It's just another mystery, another thing to solve, because otherwise I'd be giving too much away. So there we go, that is book 5. And then the last in the series, Dark Dawn over Steep House. And yeah, this is where the series comes to a definite conclusion. So these are, aren't they lovely covers? MRC Kasasian, Mangle Street Murders. So I highly recommend those. And then finally, I couldn't do a historical detective series without bringing out the Frey and McGray. The Strings of Murder by Oscar de Muriel. Now, we are on book 6 now. And I remember, we've been with Oscar from the very beginning, you know, and he's signed quite a lot of these. We met him in 2018 and I took my books along to be signed. And this was his debut book. He was virtually unknown. And this was 2015. 2015 now. Goodness me, can you believe it? So he's done one a year. And Strings of Murder, the very first one, was set in Edinburgh. Now, for those of you that have not been with my channel very long and are not aware, Ian Frey is a detective in London, but for some reason to do with the case, he's had a bit of blotted his copybook a bit, you know, and so they send him up to Edinburgh to work under, well, alongside really, because they're equal rank, and to work with McGray, and they call him Nine Nails McGray because he's a bit rough around the edges. He's very tough, and yeah, doesn't hesitate to get in a fight. And also, he's only got 9 fingers, 9 digits, and there's a story to tell about how that happened. And so they're very, very different, and I think it was a real culture shock for Ian Frey to go up to Edinburgh and work under this guy, because Ian Frey, I'm calling him Ian Gray. Ian Frey he likes things to be done properly. He likes everything to be done in order. He's a stickler for sticking to the rules. Very similar, I suppose, to Sidney Grice. And so he goes up to Edinburgh, and oh goodness me, you know, you get the complete opposite with McGray. Complete opposite. He's got stuff all over his office. It's in a right mess. He keeps going off on different tangents. There is some family history here as to why he's a bit like that, and his sister is involved. And he's made friends with Katrina, who is a medium clairvoyant, and he has got a great affinity to the mysterious and things that are going on, and he always goes and consults Katrina for advice on cases and things. So they're very, very different characters, and they have developed over the 6 books. I feel there's going to be a 7th. I got the impression when we were talking to Oscar, when we met him, that I think initially his idea was a 7-book series, but you never know, do you, when they become so popular, you know. Look at H.D. Robb and F.In. series, goodness knows what number that must be, I don't know, about 60 or 70, so you never know. So throughout all this, you're getting 2 wonderful characters, you're getting their relationship as it changes over the years and character development, and you've also got some cracking plots. So in book 1 we've got a violinist's been murdered in his home, and it's a locked room mystery, which of those times in the 1888 locked room mysteries in novels were all the rage. And you know, you're thinking, well, how they managed to murder them If the room was locked, how did they get in? And Ian Frey and Nine Nails McGray have been called in to investigate. I gave this one 5 stars, thought it was excellent. Book 2 is Fever in the Blood. Now, we're investigating further what's happening to the sister. The sister to McGray has got mental ill health, mental problems, and she is a patient in an asylum. It's hard to say that, in an asylum, and the case revolves around this asylum and what's going on there. And then you'll have perhaps heard, because I've talked about this before, but the witch trials of the time, and we are at Pendle in the west coast of Yorkshire. Well, it's Lancashire, it goes into Lancashire, and of the UK. And we're like following along on the Pendle witch trails, and so we've got all witchy gothic, all that sort of goodness mixed in here. And yeah, it takes them away from McGray's beloved Edinburgh and into Lancashire, and there's all sorts of stuff going on. Now, I want to just pause here to make a point about book 6. Now, this is book, Fever of the Blood is book 2, and the most recent one is Dance of the Serpents. And in actual fact, this follows on and continues with the mysteries and what has been set up in book 2. Now, for me, I gave this 3.5 stars. I've recently read this, and I think the reason behind it, still an excellent book, but I'd forgotten a lot of what happened in book 2. It was so long ago. I personally would have preferred Dance of the Serpents as book 3, because I think then I would have rated it a lot higher. I mean, they're all excellent, they're all excellently written, and I love the whole series, but I found myself floundering a little bit with this, because we're talking, what, 4 years ago? 4 years ago that book 2 came out, and you don't remember all the little nuances of it, do you? So what I'm going to do, my plan is I'm going to read book 2 again, and then read this book 6 after it, and see how that works for me. So I'm just sort of, if you're wanting to read the whole series, which I suggest you do, and I suggest, generally speaking, read them in order. The only exception to that is I would read book 6 after book 2. I think it would make a lot more sense. But that's me. But yeah. So we've got Fever in the Blood, book 2. Mask and Shadows. This is a bit of a theatrical edge to it, and we've got Irving. So yes, we've got Henry Irving, who is a real life character. He did exist. He was a top actor of the time. He was the director, and he ran many theatre stage productions. He was a good friend of Bram Stoker, and again, another real life character. It's a bit like going back to the other series where we've got Louis Armstrong turning up. Here we've got Henry Irving and Bram Stoker turning up. So we've got another case, and alongside a different murder in each book, you've got the developing relationship between Frey and McGray, but you've also got the developing overall story of what is happening to Pansy, who is McFrey's sister. Then, oh, if I could give this 10 stars, I would. Loch of the Dead. Oh, this is by far my favourite of this whole series. It's got everything in it. It goes up to the Isle of Marie in Scotland, in one of the remote Scottish Isles, and it's there's a family that live there. They're a bit like the Addams family. I reckon they're very much like the Addams family. They're very odd, and oh, you've got a bit of everything in there. You've got very much gothic. You've got bats. You've got vampires. You've got chemistry experiments going on. It's fabulous. You could read this, I think, as a standalone. I think the whole thing works better as a series, but this, if you're not into series and you just want to read one of Oscar's one in the books in this series, Loch of the Dead is my all-time favourite, I do have to say. It's just perfect. And the thing is that I think makes it interesting is that Oscar de Muriel is actually trained as a chemist. So he's a chemist and he also is a violinist. So you can see, like in the first one, Strings of Murder, we've got the violinist in there, and we've got all sorts of funny experiments going on in Loch of the Dead. So yeah, love, love, love. Then we've got the darker arts. Now, this is Madame Katrina. She's got a very own story here. So she's involved in with a family that actually want a seance, and things go a bit awry at this seance, and she's been framed for things that have gone wrong. And because she's such a good friend to Nine Nails, then him and Ian Frey are involved in trying to solve this plot and clear Katrina's name. So that's the darker arts. And then, as I say, book 6, The Dance of the Serpents, and this is carrying on with the Pendle Witches and all what they're been up to, and the effect that has on the whole storyline with Pansy and the asylum. So there we are. There are, should I say, there are a whole stack of books there from our shelves. 3 of our favourite historical detective series. I know there's quite a few of you have been reading Oscar de Muriel's books since since I first started along his journey. We've been along with him, I suppose, because we started at the very beginning, and I have been fortunate enough to get some copies early from his publishers. He has actually changed publishers halfway through. So 3 great series. I hope that's enticed you to go out and have a look at those, or if you have read any of those, let me know what your favourites are. So thank you for joining me. Don't forget to go and see what's happening with all the fantastic hosts for hashtag March Mystery Madness 2021. So on Tuesday, 16:30 GMT, I am joining Elizabeth from Lizzie Fay Loves Books over in the States. Whatever time it is over there, I can't remember now. About 11:30 in the morning, something like that, where she is in Florida. And we're going to be doing a book stint. So yeah, if you're interested in that, check out Lizzie Fay Loves Books. She is one of the originators, along with Troy Trowell, of the March Mystery Madness. And yeah, it'd be lovely to join her. I hope all you know what I'm like, with my mechanics and my technical things. So yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed that the link works between Florida and here. And we're going to do a bit of a book sprint. So if you'd like to join us for that, then go and check out the details on Elizabeth's channel. So thank you for joining me as always. And yeah, it's been a bit of a long one, but it is March Mystery Madness after all. So take care out there. See you next video. Bye for now.